Rip almost out to overshield. I'll drop him. On me as well. Yeah, two of them pushing me.
Hey YouTube, so if you don't know me, my name is Paradokz, and for the past few seasons now, I've been trying to kind of recreate COD's dynamic curve in Apex. So if you don't know, COD's dynamic curve is basically one that, it's a reverse S-curve. So it starts really slow, speeds up, and gets really fast near the end. Now I've made this in ALC'S, but basically my goal for this was make a sense that's responsive at close range, really good for long range and recoil control, while also allowing me to make really small fine adjustments, and allowing me to flick the targets. Now, I don't have paddles or anything in my default stock DualSense. I do have claw though, but that's the most. Now, while you can just skip to the sense, I think it makes sense for you to stick around for the whole video, so you can see exactly what everything in the sense does, and you can kind of tweak it to better suit you. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is Deadzone. So Deadzone, which is this blue circle here, is essentially the area of the thumbstick where no movement is registered. So, for any movement to be registered, you have to bypass this blue circle. Now, if you have a 0% dead zone and a 0% response curve, all possible movements of the stick are registered. So you can make really small... Every single movement that you can make on the controller is registered. Now, if you increase dead zone, some of those that are in the blue circle here will not be registered. And so you want to have this basically as low as possible. Now, on a brand new controller, you want to be running either 0% to 2%. Now, since my controller is kind of older, I'm on a 3% dead zone. Now, the second setting, outer threshold, essentially what this is, which is this red circle here, once the stick reaches that value, it instantly goes to its maximum sensitivity. So say I was playing a 500 sense here. Once I reach that red circle, it instantly goes up to 500. So say I was playing 500, and I reach this, the edge of the red circle, I'd instantly reach the max sense. Additionally, at this red circle, something called extra yaw and extra pitch comes into play. And we're going to talk about that more later. But outer threshold, even though you reach the max sense quicker, you kind of lose some range of motion. So you kind of want to find a balance, usually. For me though, I like to play it as low as possible, because I use extra yaw. Now our third setting is response curve. So response curve is basically how the game translates your physical stick movements into movements of the crosshair on screen. So it's basically like following an algorithm to translate them. So now note, it's not just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's dynamic. If you just hold the X and move your stick, you can go in between these values also. So this is a 10 value, and this is also a 10 value. So you can move it in between. Now 0, which is linear, is our ramp. It's 1 to 1. So if I move my stick 50%, which is around here, I'll be at around 50% of my max speed, or I'll be at exactly 50%. So if my max is 260, if I move it 50%, I want to be at 130. If it was 500, 250, etc. Now all the others are exponential curves. So for example, something like classic 10. If I move it at the same 50%, I'm going to be at maybe 30% of my max speed. Now I'll show clips in a second here, but basically what linear is really good for is those really cracked, flashy, faster adjustments. You can direction change a lot faster on linear. Whereas on classic, you can make really small, minute adjustments, and it starts much slower than linear. Linear is better for, fast direction changes, while classic usually is better for range. Linear also, which I'll show you guys now, has a smaller built-in dead zone. So if I'm on 0% dead zone, 0 has none. 0 response curve or ramp. But if I move up to 10, there's this almost built-in dead zone here, and so you're not really gonna have stick drift, because I'm not touching my stick at all. No stick drift, whereas if it was on linear, I'm having some level of stick drift. And it's a trade-off, because I can make small, or not small, fast adjustments, but because that it starts faster, I'm gonna have some drift. whereas 24 response curve, you know, major dead zone. So you want to find something kind of in between. Now the response curve I use is 3.9. So if you just put the orange bit right behind the 10 stick, this stick represents 10 response curve, and I just move it all the way back to 3. You can see here, I have no dead zone, just like linear. So I can still make those really fast, you know, cracked adjustments. I still have a really small dead zone, as opposed to something like, you know, 10, which has this almost built-in dead zone here. And you know, I can make really small, fine adjustments. Give me something to track. You know, I can track stuff perfectly. And then flick the targets, stop, and micro adjust. Now the reason I really like 3.9 as a curve is because you get the fastness and the small built-in dead zone of linear, while also having the range capabilities of something like classic. So you kind of end up with a curve that gives you the best of both worlds. Moving on, we're going to talk about yaw speed and pitch speed. Yaw speed is horizontal speed, or left and right, while pitch is up and down, vertical speed. Now the reason I have these equal is because on the default senses, as you can see by these lines here, it's something more so like this, and so pitch speed is less, it's not as fast as yaw speed. And so diagonals usually become impaired, like a true diagonal on your controller is going to give you something that's more biased towards the horizontal. So the only reason I use 260/260s for those clean diagonals mostly, it's more intuitive to me. I've always played the same yaw on the same pitch, but you don't need to if you don't want to. You know, turning yaw on extra pitch. So what this does is that basically, when you reach the red circle here, outer threshold, when you reach that circle, it adds on the sense. It adds on this value to your max sensitivity. So when I reach the circle, I'm gonna have 80 plus 260, which is 340. So when I touch that red circle, when I'm at the edge of the stick, I'm basically moving at 340. What this allows me to do is flick the targets in hipfire, as well as make fast 180s. Now as for ADS yaw and ADS pitch, I have it at 95/95, and extra pitch I have it at 70 and 70. Now I've seen pros that play up to 220 cents, and I've seen pros that play as low as 85. So again, play whatever you comfortable on. I would say though that don't play anything too high and don't play anything too low. Find something kind of in between. Now why I think extra sense is so good is because you can have that really fast sense while also having a really slow sense in the middle when you're actually aiming and tracking in fights. Now, one very cool thing, I'll show this here. Once you're actually over the aim assist bump, extra yaw completely goes away. That means that you can flick the targets and have a really fast kind of sense for movements and flicks and stuff. But once you're actually on target, it's going to completely go away. Now, the friction aim assist or the slowdown you're going to get is going to be relative to your sense. So if I'm on a 500, you're not going to feel the effects, even though it is still there, as much as if it was on a regular, you know, lower sensitivity, where you can visibly see that slowdown. And so I do want to say this isn't necessarily extra aim assist. What this is though is that you have that really fast sense, but once you're on target in the aim assist bump, it goes away, or it slows down. And so you have that really fast, flashy sense for movements and flicking. Once you're actually in fights, it completely goes away. Now, the last two settings I really want to talk about are ramp up time and ramp up delay. So ramp up time, how I basically think about this is like an AMXL curve. So over this time period, it's going to slowly, gradually add on the extra yaw values and extra pitch values onto the regular sense. So I'll show this here. And I believe it's 1 second. It's going to gradually add it on to the regular. Whereas if this was on 0, instantly reaches that max value. Now I think a setting of around 5%, maybe 20% allows you to be really deliberate about your flicks. You know, because you can have real control over it. So you can decide when you want to flick and be more deliberate about it. Whereas ramp up delay, what this basically is that after this amount of time has passed, then ramp up time and all these will start to be affected. So if I had this at 100% for both, that would mean after 1 full second has passed, then this would start to gradually increase. So for me to reach my max, it would take me 2 seconds. You can see that takes a very long time. Now delay can be useful, especially if, you know, you're over flicking a lot. So if I'm playing someone like Bang, for example, you might want that extra time so you're not flicking over targets. And you have your regular sense, whereas if I was on, you know, a 0%, I'm gonna be flicking over targets if I'm touching the edge of the stick like that. But also, you know, flicks are gonna take way too long to perform that way. So you kinda have to find something that's in between. Now I think time and delay can be very good, though I would generally just stick with time. I personally only use time, I don't use delay. But delay can be useful, especially in something like a bang smoke. Just so you can be really deliberate about when you want to have this extra sense. Because with delay, it's way harder to actually flick over the dummy. So it more so depends on the needs of the player themselves. For this sense though, I'm only running ramp up time, 10%. Now in doing this, we've made a sense that's really precise and slow at the beginning, really good recoil control, fast with, as you can see here, no built-in dead zone, like something like Classic would have, while also being able to flick from target to target. This, however, isn't really COD dynamic. COD dynamic is probably around, somewhere around 5. And these would be higher, extra sense. What we have made, however, undoubtedly is a reverse S-curve. And like, to how good I know the sense is, you don't even need like aim assist really. Like I can turn off AA. Still beam targets. Still flick the targets, as you can see. And you can see no aim assist. Extra is gonna slow down now because there's no bob. It's just a really solid sense. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that these sensitivities, as well as their curves, so for example, 4-4 classic, 4-3 linear, 6-4 classic, whatever, you can actually like map these one-to-one into ALC'S. So someone a long time ago named Chris You Approved actually data mined all these values, and so you can transfer over all your regular sensitivities and the curves into ALC'S. So this, for example, is a 4-4 classic no dead zone mapped one-to-one. So I'll just try and move around a bit so you can kind of see. I'm not a classic player, so bear with me. But yeah, this sensitivity is a one-to-one of regular 4-4 classic. So moving in the middle, move to edges, you know, target switching. Same thing. What this means then is that we could theoretically take these values and put them in here, But say something like a 4-4 classic is too sluggish for you. You can now run 4-4 dynamic. Say 4-3 linear is too fast for you. You can run 4-3 dynamic. So what you can do is basically fine tune these regular sensitivities where previously people only ran classic linear, maybe steady. You can now run a dynamic sense in ALCs. But guys, that is all for today's video. If you did enjoy, please like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one.